the graphic that you guys used in your advertisement for this, because I thought it was kind of cute. Um, as you just heard from Mary Ann, my name's Gary Dornhafer. And what we're going to do today is a little bit of a story about technology from my perspective, from the perspective of a technology service provider that has been dedicated to just trying to help the mediation, arbitration, dispute resolution industry. So we're going to start out with some information about ADR Notable, the company that I built. And then I'm just going to bring you through what I am living with the explosion of AI onto the scene. And then we're going to delve deeply into that. And I'm going to show you some of the most um, interesting new tools that are out there and talk about what it's like to try and use them, or think about whether they get built into my product, or just where do we go from here. So most of it is going to be about this kind of these the new technologies. But first, a little background. So I started out right out of law school in 1984 as a private practice litigator in a large firm. I went to the University of Chicago Law School, and I started with Mayer Brown, a large Chicago-based firm. But I started actually in the Denver branch office. So as I was talking to people a minute ago, I just moved, and I have now moved back to Colorado at the back end of my career, back to the state where I started out. After a few years as a litigator, I went in-house, and I started my in-house career with American Airlines. I spent about almost not just short of 9 years with American Airlines total, 7 in headquarters doing litigation support and antitrust work, and 2 more years assigned to the Government Affairs Office in Washington, D.C. From there, in the year 2000, the 5 big American airlines, there were 5 back then, that included Continental and Northwest Airlines, came together and formed Orbitz, the travel website. It really intended to try and provide a lower cost distribution channel on the internet for their tickets in competition with Travelocity and Expedia. And I was recruited to be the general counsel for Orbitz. When that was sold a few years later, I did a technology startup company with some colleagues that kind of grew out of Orbitz. We built a company called Certify, which had it was what's called a rules engine, which is just technology that can ask a bunch of questions about some situation in front of it. And it did credit card fraud checks. So you could determine pretty rapidly, very accurately, whether somebody trying to buy something on the internet, whether they were an authorized user of the credit card that they were trying to use or not. And that, it's harder to do when you're not the credit card company, but you're just the vendor. So it needed some technology to do that. And then that company went for a little while. We sold it. And I went back into the airline industry with the International Air Transport Association, which is the global trade association for the airline industry. And all of this is a little bit relevant to the whole story here, because the role of an in-house counsel, I found, really emphasized the benefits of ADR, of alternative dispute resolution. When the CEO comes to you and says, "Okay, Gary, we've been sued. How long is it going to take to resolve this? How much is it going to cost? And what's the likelihood of our winning in the end?" And you can't honestly answer any of those questions on the day you've just read the complaint. You realize that if you're really going to serve your client, really an effort to figure out how to control the matter, resolve the conflict, move on for the company or your client, it makes a whole lot more sense than spending the next 2 years in very expensive litigation. So that's all relevant, because when I kind of concluded my role with the International Air Transport Association, my wife was an academic in Ohio. We lived near Columbus, and I had worked with the Ohio State University Aviation School before. And I came back and said, it would be interesting to build an aviation dispute center for aviation dispute resolution. That got me introduced to the OSU law faculty, which turns out, little did I know, they are ranked in the top 3 U.S. law school faculties in the field of ADR. And I just had terrific support wonderful people, Nancy Rogers, Josh Stuhlberg, and others, really were really terrific to work with. And along the way, I sort of abandoned the notion of the aviation center, but got very interested in the fact that there did not seem to be basic technology for case management being utilized in the field, in the ADR field. People were either they're avoiding technology for the most part, or they were kind of cobbling things together from spreadsheets and Word and maybe Asana or one of these other project management software products. And meanwhile, of course, over in the legal tech industry, there's a million products that are designed fit for purpose for managing a law firm, managing an in-house legal department. And sometimes people were trying to kind of use those over into dispute resolution and largely finding it a little frustrating that the fit wasn't very good. So that gave rise to the idea to build ADR Notable. So today, ADR Notable is intended to provide basic case management support designed specifically around the needs of the ADR practitioner. And then as we've grown, we added tools for administering firms or court systems, community mediation, or other institutional programs. But it started as the individual user case management. And the theory here is pretty straightforward. From the perspective of a technology service provider, you look at what mediators do, and you say, okay, the mediation process is intensely human-centric. That is not a space that traditionally technology does well. So that is not our sweet spot. What is our sweet spot? Our sweet spot is all of the other stuff you have to do to run your practice, all of those administrative tasks, right? So just as an example of kind of a roadmap of that, you have to figure out how to get the information for new cases in some place where you can access that again. So there's new case intake where you just find out who are the parties, who are their counsel, if they have counsel, who else may be involved in this. In commercial cases, it could be insurers. In family matters, it could be other counselors that you may bring in, or children or other people who are affected by this. You need contact information, names, addresses, contact information, so forth. Whatever else you do, you need some kind of task management, which could be as simple. We actually just use things like checklists, where you just go through and say, on balance, when I start a new case, I need to do these 15 things. I need to get my engagement letter signed. I need to do a conflicts check. Whatever is on your list. We use that kind of methodology. It's simple, it's basic. We all use it when we go to the grocery store, and we use it for a good reason. It works. You need to be able to gather information about the matter, about the parties, and both gather it securely and store it securely. You need to be able to schedule time with the parties, either individual meetings or the group session. You need to manage the actual session, which usually means somewhere to take some notes. And as you move parties toward resolution, you're tracking their progress in some way. You want to be able to document the agreement that the parties reach. You obviously want to get paid, so billing, some way to do your billing and track it, get that money in, and so forth. And then follow-up. I mean, the follow-up could be scheduling just a touch point to call the parties again in a few weeks, or maybe more importantly, ensuring that the conclusion of your matter that you delete the things that you gathered, which may be deemed confidential. So the goal for where we went with ADR Notable was just to support that. And I'm just going to give you a few slides of what it looks like. And if you're interested, I'm hopeful you'll follow up. But we'll move on in a minute to what else I faced in trying to build such a product. So this slide is just an example from my test dashboard. So it doesn't have data in every field the way it would in yours, but it's what the product looks like more or less. So pretty simple navigation along the left-hand side. And then, at the top of the page are your cases. And we'll look at that matrix of the cases a little deeper in a moment. Right below there, you can connect in your calendar, whether you use Outlook or Google. And you can see on your right-hand side, lower right, the checklist reminders is just an example. When you are working in a case and you set a due date for a particular checklist item, we gather all of those, we pull them forward so that when you log in, you immediately see those. And if they're in red, you're obviously past due. If they're in orange, they're coming up soon. And if they're in a light gray color, they're just out there, but they're the next things on your list. So looking at that, just the matrix of the cases a little more closely, those column headings as you go across the top, the title of the case ID, and so forth, those are configurable. There's a basic default that meets most people's needs, but if you need other things in those headings, we can put them there. You could put them there, actually. The case ID can be auto incrementing if you want it to be. There's a place to store court numbers or any other external number you may need to track. You may be getting cases from multiple firms. Let's say you do work for a community mediation association that is also on ADR Notable. You can log in and just handle all of your cases in one place, but maintain the security between those sources of the cases so that the firm administrator at the Community Mediation Association would never even be able to see the rest of your cases. They don't know anything about those. But from your perspective in your panel, you see them all. You can identify who's working the case, who's on the staff, whether it's a case manager or a mediator. You can track your referrals, track dates of opening, and then there's a status, which you can manage inside each case and gets pulled forward here. All of these columns can be sorted and filtered in various ways, so you see your cases just the way you want to see them. And then just a quick example inside a specific case, you can see now the navigation on the left-hand side is opened up to give you all the things that you can jump to inside a specific case. So documents in the case, where you've taken your notes, if there is a term sheet that you're building with what has been agreed, time log, we can help you track your time, and then case billing, and the time log can go right into the billing feature. There is an audit log, which is your activity history, and then a very simple way to go back and delete that material that you want to get out of a case at its conclusion. So that's the left-hand margin navigation. And the rest is laid out in a pretty obvious way. What's due soon up at the top left, again, pulls from your checklist in that case. The next thing that the checklist you are working in that case tells you need to do. Details about the case in terms of like just the basic information, the title, what type of case it is, and type of case can be pulled forward into reports over a period of time, so you can see what kinds of cases you're doing, and other basic information about it. The billing down at the bottom, you'll notice you can set the split between the parties. So there's a funny story from one of our users out in California who was doing a divorce case, who called me and said, was laughing about a case where the parties had just engaged in an excruciating negotiation of how to pay his fees, resulting in a 78-22% split. And he's kind of laughed and said, thank God I can just let the computer determine that for me, because he could just set it in there and it'll compute all of the bills going forward by that split. Then over here on the right is the status bar. Underneath each of these tabs, the intake, the open and close, so forth, you can build out more detail if you want, and then sort your cases along those lines. So this gives you a sense of the dashboards. I'm not going to go the full demo of the product. It takes about an hour. This is the bottom half of your dashboard screen, where you can see, you can put your link in for your Zoom call. So there's right there at your fingertips, and then there's party information. You're seeing party one. You click the button up in the top right for party two, and it would just change over. And it can be set up for representing companies, and then telling you down below with the affiliated participants who's actually representing that company. and so on. So this is just, so this, this again was just focused on trying to help you with all of the practical tasks. Two of the big ones we heard a lot about were the billing feature and the scheduling. And we built our own billing module, so you can do billing however you possibly do billing, whether it's hourly or flat rate or whatever, get paid in advance and then apply funds off that advance payment. We can handle that no matter how you do it. And then on scheduling, there's always been a problem, and for trying to find that time that 4 or 5 people are all available at the same time. We use a Canadian product actually called Calendar Hero, which we found to be the best tool for that job. And then just a little bit more about ADR Notable, and then we'll move on. People ask about security. It is cloud-based in Azure, which is the Microsoft Cloud Services. For our Canadian clients, we actually have established servers in Canada within that system, which then means your data never leaves the Canada. So hopefully that's useful to you. And we encrypt things, of course, both in transit and in storage. We integrate with a lot of things you may already be using. Microsoft Outlook and Word is now fully engaged so that you can use it from inside the tool and not have to store documents outside of ADR Notable as you work with them. Our billing module feeds QuickBooks so that you can do your full enterprise accounting based on the revenue that we account for. We've incorporated Sign Now, which is a digital signature product, Stripe for credit card and other kinds of payments, Calendar Hero I mentioned, and Zoom is now also accessible right inside. When you start with ADR Notable, we include some training. There's a very deep knowledge base that shows you how to do a lot of things. When you have that question, you can often find the answer on your own. And then we provide live support as well. So, okay, so this is my story, right? We started in really 2019 to build this. It took us 2 years to build. And then we launched and we started out into the marketplace with this product that does all of these tangential matters to the real heart of what the skills that you provide and to use to serve your clients. And we're trying to take the administrative burden off you. And that, all's good until November of 2022. Which is when the one kind of in the center of this screen is a little bit cut off, ChatGPT, owned by a company called OpenAI, was first announced. And what it is, as many of you probably already know, it's a form of artificial intelligence known as a large language model, LLM. And what they trained it to do was really just be able to converse with you almost like a human would. Based by training it on the vast amount of resources, knowledge, and information that is available on the internet. Now, it was what is called unsupervised training, meaning they didn't tell it which things it was engaged with were true, false, politically incorrect, all the way to socially unacceptable. No labeling of the data, no training of what's good, what's bad, what's true, what's false. So it just got everything. And initially, they were just trying to get it to be able to string together, to essentially, I put air quotes around, understand a query and then respond in a way that a human might. But all of it was just a probability calculation, looking at this vast source of data about when somebody says, "Hi, how are you?" What are the likely responses based upon all of this data they have seen and been trained on? So it doesn't understand anything in the way we do. It is just looking at a body of information that is enormous and just saying, how would a human likely respond to that? So ChatGPT hits our world in November of 2022. And rapidly, these other companies that are on this slide and more pop up. So Claude, the one to the left by a company called Anthropic, it's actually some refugees who didn't like the direction that OpenAI was going with ChatGPT, created a competitor. Theirs is intended to be what they call the ethical AI, and it has many more guardrails on what it can do or will do or won't do. Around it, it has a little constitution you can read of the principles they try and build into how Claude operates. Llama is the Meta or Facebook team. Gemini is the Google team. A couple of these other independents. We'll meet Pi in a minute, Pi.ai. And Harvey is a dedicated legal product. So those all started popping up in, across sort of February 23 was Llama, March of 23 was Claude, and it just exploded. So, okay, so now put yourself in my shoes. I've built this nice product that is just very basically helping on the simple administrative tasks, and then this hits. Well, what did we do? Honestly, we joined the crowd initially. We started just running and racing along with all these other tech companies, trying to figure out a way to apply this brave new world of artificial intelligence into our existing product. But two things happened. One is that these other companies started popping up and they were leapfrogging one another in their capabilities. So one week, my outside consultant would be sure we should use Claude, OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude product, and then a week later it'd say no. Now ChatGPT has enhanced their product. It's better, smarter, faster, whatever. And so we went through this period where we just couldn't even choose which of the tools we wanted. And then further news started popping, right? And my favorite one is still this article, which was really kind of set the tone. And many of you may remember this. This was a reporter for the New York Times who had sat down with ChatGPT, Bing's chatbot, which is actually ChatGPT, because Microsoft is invested in OpenAI and Bing is Microsoft product. So it was basically ChatGPT. And what he found is if you engaged this thing as though it were another person in using your prompts, which is the text message you typed in, you could drive it off of sort of answering basic questions or helping you sort through the vast resources of the internet. And you could drive it off into personal directions. And in this particular article, he describes this chatbot suddenly declaring its love for him, and then going on to try and convince him that he and his wife were, not the right, well-suited partners, and that, basically he should leave his wife in order to engage in a relationship with the chatbot. So, not a great start to artificial intelligence. But still, back home at ADR Notable, I'm saying, okay, all right, now, we can stay away from these wild flights of emotion if we just limit the way we're going to try and use this product. But then you started seeing other issues like what now has been dubbed hallucinations. And this is just the tendency for AI tools to make stuff up. And most famously in the legal area, in June of 2023, two gentlemen who will undoubtedly have this, on their tombstones, Peter Loduca and Stephen Schwartz, in a case in New York, Mata versus Avianca Air, filed a brief written entirely by ChatGPT. And it was discovered after a little bit of back and forth that the tool had made up case citations for cases that did not exist. And because Mr. Loduca and Mr. Schwartz did not carefully review the output of the model of ChatGPT, they ended up with, first of all, becoming infamous for this. I guess that'll probably be on their tombstones, but also eventually suffered a fine from the court. So, okay, I'm thinking, all right, hallucination's not good, but maybe if I just said to the system, take my notes of what the parties have seemed to have agreed to and write the document, write at least a summary, if not a formal settlement agreement. Um, and frankly, I continue to suffer the problems where, because it is looking at a vast, body of information, it looks at what ingredients other parties may have used in settling their cases, and I couldn't convince it to stop making up additional terms that the parties had not agreed to. So again, I'm trying to figure out how to use this tool in ADR Notable, and not doing very well. So then I say, okay, but how about if I give it a finite, defined batch of information and say, generate a summary of that. And I'm reading about others doing that. And then I'm finding articles like this one, which was just published in February of this year, of AI chatbots being unable to accurately summarize news reports. So there's a lot going on here, is the bottom line. And as a technology service provider, you basically have to come to the conclusion that the technology is not quite ready for me to incorporate it and put it into a product that I'm willing to present to parties. Now, having said that, let me just say that I do believe we should all be using AI today. And you just need to be cautious and aware of its potential, defects when you use it. So here's just an example. And one of the people who I think has been the most outspoken about and leading on this is a trainer and speaker and current president of the chair, I don't know what her title is, of the ABA, American Bar Association Dispute Resolution Section, Susan Guthrie. And she is a big advocate. She's done a lot of podcasts about it, a lot of writing and speaking. And here are some things that I think you can do, you can use it for. And indeed, I use it for all the time. But you have to just remember what it does and how it works and what kinds of things that it might generate that you need to be cautious about. So for me, first drafts of almost any written product you want to write are terrific to start in one of these chatbot models. Their grammar, their spelling will always be immaculate. You can actually set tones to it. So you can ask it to write in a formal tone or an informal tone or even a humorous one. You can have them create an outline around a subject for you that, again, is just going to save you a lot of time. It may not be brilliant, may not come up with anything wouldn't have come up with, but it'll generate it in about 2.5 seconds. And it would have taken you 30 minutes to think through it. Plus, if you treat it as a starting point and you read through it and you say, okay, yeah, but you missed, the subtlety of this point and so forth, then you just edit the work product to add your own knowledge that may exceed in a specialized area the knowledge of the chatbot. But that first draft is really almost unbeatable. A quick aside to talking about having it write in different styles. I was doing a presentation to an organization of the court administrators, which it just includes kind of everybody behind the scenes running courts for the state of Ohio. And I didn't really know what this organization was about. So I asked ChatGPT to tell me describe the jobs of court administrators. And it, of course, spit something out that was very, very useful for me. And then I asked it again to say, okay, that was kind of boring. Let's do it in rhyming poetry. And in split second, it sends out, it publishes for me a job description of court administrators in rhyming poetry. And then I said, well, it seems a little lightweight, seems kind of trivial. Let's do it in the form of Shakespeare. And it did a sonnet essentially on the role of court administrators that was so heart-wrenching. It concluded by describing them as the guardians of the soul of the court. And someone from the audience shouted he was going to put it on the door of his office for all to see. So, I mean, it's fun. It can be fun and silly, or it can be really useful. But using it to draft is, I would say, start learning how to use it now. Just make sure you read it carefully when you get going and before you apply it. Summaries of something you know a lot about and can verify the accuracy. There's a great quote I have in another presentation from a Lord Justice in the UK describing it as, quote, bloody useful. And he's writing some opinion, and he just needs a one paragraph summary of a particular relatively specific and narrow area of the law, one with which he is intimately familiar. He asks the system to write it. It writes it beautifully. He reads it carefully and says, yes, that's correct. And off he goes, right? So not only, first drafts, but when there's just that one thing you just want somebody else to write and get it down in a nice form, with good word choice and good grammar and correct punctuation, but you then proofread it, another good use. Managing large sets of data. Now we're back in a field where computers do well, right? It does well at finding patterns within data, extracting elements that would be either time-consuming or maybe impossible for you. One use of it in this example that I'm not particularly proud of, and I'm not sure I really like the idea, but there are some of these applications now that are helping parties select an arbitrator based on trends in that arbitrator's management of matters. So if you have a case where you think you're going to really need a lot of discovery, you can use these apps to help you find an arbitrator who seems to be more liberal in their permissions for discovery, for instance. Generating ideas. AI does not have real world experience. It does not, I think, really in any sense understand things like gravity or green grass or a wind blowing in your hair. But it can generate ideas based upon just this vast, compendium of materials that it has in its training library. I can tell you whenever you try this, keep your expectations in check. You're likely to get a lot of chaff for the amount of kernels of wheat. So you'll get 10 ideas, 8 of which, or even 7 of which will have been completely obvious. No, you didn't need to ask a computer for those. 2 of which will be utter gibberish because, as I say, it has these gaps. And 1 that'll maybe make you think. It may not actually be on target, but it'll at least be inspirational for you to get you to think about the matter that you're at hand in a different way. So it's useful, but keep your expectations low. And then in training, and this is where Susan started using it, she would ask the models to come up with mock disputes, and it can play the role of a party and respond in the way a party might. If you set the tone, you set the background, you ask it to respond in the manner that you believe an angry and frustrated spouse might respond to the various issues you then present, it can use those guidelines in its database to respond in a manner that would be then challenging because it'll be maybe a little bit of tone of anger and so forth. So it's a pretty interesting and useful tool in the field of training. So here's some skills that you may not be quite as aware of, some that we maybe just mentioned, that I think of as sort of still on the margin. One of them that I talk about a lot, and I think will eventually be useful to mediators, is not the large language model application of artificial intelligence, but it's a different field called emotion AI. And what they've done is essentially programmed the face for facial expression and voice recognition. And it will help you identify the emotions that are being expressed either by facial expression or by tone of voice and word choice and so forth. Now, it's like having another person in the room. They may be right, they may be wrong, but they may be picking up something, it may be picking up something you didn't notice. And that maybe requires then your exploration as opposed to just believing it off the top. And I've presented this in a notion of imagine using it on a Zoom call with a lot of parties, and the computer can watch them all at once, and you can only watch one at a time with any real focus. So it may actually flag for you some party over here on the side of your screen is reacting negatively to what's being said. Now you have to take all of this with a grain of salt. Maybe they're reacting negatively because their kids are fighting in the room next door, or maybe they're reacting to what was just said. But it is going to send you a message that you might find useful. So this is still at the margin. Nobody's built that tool yet; doesn't exist, but it is an opportunity that may be forthcoming. Foreign languages maybe not so much on the margin, other than the nuance of language can be a little lost on a computer, but basic translation can be done almost in real time, amongst many languages. So a pretty interesting side use of the large language models. And we mentioned summarizing large volumes of information, drafting documents from notes or guidance. I can tell you this is getting better from my experience day by day. It's not in my tool yet because I don't think it's completely reliable, but it's getting closer and closer. And then genuinely helpful feedback in specific situations. You can, and we're going to go into this here in just a minute, in 2 seconds. Let me describe to you what the latest has happened to the AI tools. There is now a new process, relatively new, that is becoming available to us all. That the acronym is RAG, R-A-G, and it stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. What they're doing, as I mentioned, ChatGPT, the first one, was just trained on the entire volume of the internet without any kind of curation or judgment about the materials going into the funnel. What RAG is it allows you to curate a different input library of materials. So you could sit back and feed it materials that you've read. You could, Getting to Yes, or any of the kind of materials that are relevant to what we do. You can now create a secondary kind of training library. And the way it works is your prompt gets filtered through your library and improved. And then it goes out to the world, gets all of the other information, and then comes back through this filter again, so that it dramatically improves the accuracy of what it's saying to you, because it is being filtered through a database that you now have curated and selected. And I just want to run really quickly through this Notebook LM. This is a product out there. It's made by Google. If you go search for Notebook LM by Google, you'll find it, and you can make your own. You can do your own. So welcome to Notebook LM. This is what it looks like. I'm going to go quickly through this because it's just interesting for you to see what's being done. So I created my own little library about a topic I'm interested in, which is trying to convince firms not to build their own solution, but to buy mine. So there's a classic business school case about a buy-build decision. When I look at various services or technology, should I buy it from somebody else or should I build it? What are the pros and cons and so forth? So I found these 5 articles, which you can see over here. I fed them into my Notebook LM, and then I asked it to sort of basically work with those. There are these 3 next steps. I can either add notes of my own to the articles, or I can just have it create an audio overview, or I can have it do a summary doc. But then I noticed this thing over here, the deep dive, and I can generate a deep dive conversation. And I thought, what in the world is that? So, and this is just a little more close up of it. So I hit that generate button, and first I get this little screen, says it's going to take me a minute, And this may, by the way, not be terribly practical, but it's really amazingly fascinating.
Have you ever noticed how often
this is what it created,
especially in tech
actually?
or legal fields, find themselves facing this?
Let me stop this for a minute. So what you're about to hear, it created this based on these 5 articles. These 2 voices don't exist. There are no humans that go along with these voices. They created a 20-minute conversation between 2 people sounding very smart and very, very approachable, talking about the topic that I fed it. Now, let me keep playing this a little bit.
Like when there's a new challenge or need pops up and it's like, okay, do we try to tackle this ourselves and build a solution in-house? Or do we go out and see if there's something we can just buy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the classic build versus buy question.
Exactly. And it's something that just seems to come up over and over again and not just in one specific area.
Right. It's everywhere. Like we see this with general business software and, especially these days with legal technology, everything's moving so fast.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today to help you, the listener, really understand this. And we've got some great perspectives to share with you. We've got insights from Jamie Dahini, who's a VP of Technology Services at Braze.
So this thing is now citing the authors of the articles that I fed it.
We'll get a broad tech view.
Perfect.
We also have articles that focus specifically on legal technology and even the perspective of Alex Zilberman, who's actually the CEO of a legal tech startup. So our mission today is to really dig deep into this build versus buy question and give you some practical insights and things to consider. And we're going to look at this both broadly, across industries, but then zoom in specifically on the world of legal tech.
Right, because the considerations can be a bit different depending on what you're looking at.
Now, I've always wondered, why does this build versus buy question keep coming up? I mean, you would think that by now, companies would have a pretty solid grasp of when to do one versus the other.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? I think there's something really interesting going on with the underlying mindset, especially.
Okay, so I'm going to move on from this, but I mean, just sit back and, kind of absorb what you're listening to. An entirely artificial intelligence generated conversation that is indistinguishable from 2 humans having this conversation. I can tell you the only thing I noticed in it, in listening to a 20-minute podcast it created, is it mangled a citation to a particular data security standard called ISO 27001. And it didn't get that number right. It put some decimals in it, did something else that if you're really a nerd like me, you would have heard and recognized something was wrong. But otherwise, holy cow, I mean, it is truly an impressive output. Okay, so we're going to skip now to introducing my good friend, Pi. This is one of the products that's out there. It was the first one I came across that is fully voice responsive. And you can download it to your iPhone. And I admit, sometime when I was traveling, I had a little sleep deprivation, couldn't get to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and literally had a full conversation back and forth with my friend Pi. Little scary. This is like the movies where you fall in love with your digital assistant here. But let me show you what this looks like. I just did a little quick screen record here of this. And the text of what Pi is saying is over to the right.
Got it. I'm ready to continue our chat whenever you are.
Okay, great. Pi, can you give me some idea how you might be able to directly assist mediators who are managing a particular conflicts?
Absolutely. Here are some ways I can directly assist mediators in managing conflicts. 1, provide real-time feedback. By analyzing the conversation and emotions of participants, I can offer mediators real-time insights into the parties' feelings and reactions, helping them adapt their approach as needed. 2.
I might note that I separately asked it if it really can read emotions in a different conversation. And the answer was yes, that it's been trained on tone, pace, word choice, and volume. to help identify at least gross emotions like anger and excitement on one end of the spectrum, and calmness or even depression or sadness on the other end. So when it says it can actually provide feedback about this, it thinks it really means it.
Facilitate communication. I can help draft clear, neutral messages and provide suggestions for effective communication techniques to improve dialogue between parties. 3, analyze case history. By examining data from similar past cases, I can offer mediators valuable information on potential outcomes and suggest effective strategies for resolution. 4, enhance impartiality. As an unbiased AI, I can help maintain fairness and objectivity throughout the mediation process, providing consistent decision-making support for the mediator. 5, support pre-mediation preparation. And I can assist mediators in preparing for sessions by gathering and analyzing relevant information on the case and parties involved. Overall, my goal is to support mediators by offering helpful tools, resources, and insights that enhance their ability to guide parties toward resolution.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
So there you go. There's my friend Pi and how Pi thinks it could be helping you today. Now let's go one step further. ChatGPT now has taken these two concepts of voice responsiveness and RAG, this retrieval augmented generation, and put them together into, well, they didn't put it together. They made it possible. So if you go to ChatGPT, you can go over to this little left-hand margin where it's, under ChatGPT and has Sora and Monday and the Negotiator. What these are is these are, when it says AGPT, it means it has created one of these little mini libraries like the Notebook LM tool. So it has curated specific literature or content around a particular topic. So I had played around, as you can see, with the Negotiator, which helps you understand how to negotiate better. And now here's the real punchline. You can create your own. So you hit the little create button, it goes to this screen, and you can begin to curate your own GPT or mini library. Now, here's the fun part that is just really a little mind-blowing. Let me introduce Professor John Landy. Excuse me. Okay, so John Landy and I got together, I don't know, more than a year ago. And we started talking. He is a professor in the law school at University of Missouri, has studied mediation all his entire career, has written prolifically in the field. I had started reading some of his things and was very attracted to it. It's very practical. It just speaks to me. It's very, very on point. And it started with long ago, he was taking other academics to task with this distinction between facilitative and evaluative, and kind of said, look, real mediators, weave in and out of those kinds of styles as needed by the parties. And then his later work sort of said, look, every individual case should be approached as though you were going to do a dispute resolution system design process on it. You should first think hard about what do these parties need? What's going on in this case? And how should I adjust my process to best suit the needs of these parties? So he's written on this forever. We got involved. I really loved what he had written. As I noted earlier, really like the idea of just checklists. Give me checklists to make sure I do everything I'm supposed to do to get prepared. He read the book Checklist Manifesto, which I recommended to him, by Atul Gawande, drank the Kool-Aid, and spent a couple of months basically taking everything he'd ever written and consolidating it into kind of process checklists. And along the way, we realized there are two distinct kinds of checklists. One is prescriptive. It says, do this, like, buy milk. And others are just make sure you think about this. Like, instead of telling you to do something, it's sort of like, in a particular case, have you considered whether there will be power imbalances in these parties? So it just makes sure you ask yourself the question, but it still relies on your skill set, knowledge, and expertise to answer the question in the context. So anyway, he generated all these checklists, and I thought they were great. He allowed us to embed them in a library in ADR Notable, available for everybody for free. But he then learned about ChatGPT, and he built the John Landy RPS coach. RPS stands for his personal acronym is Real Practice Systems. So what I'm about to introduce to you and violate, guidance I was given once about never do a live presentation or live demonstration, is we're going to meet John Landy's coach. Okay, so I hope you have on screen the John Landy RPS negotiation and mediation coach.
Yes.
Great. I'm gonna start by asking it a question, and then I think we can actually have other people asking questions. So here we go. Hi, Coach. How are you doing?
Thanks very much for your prompt. Before I respond, I want to be sure you understand what this tool can and cannot do and how you should use it. It can help mediators, attorneys, parties, educators, trainers, students, trainees, and ADR program administrators prepare for and participate in negotiation or mediation, among many other things that may be relevant to your needs. Like all AI systems, RPS Coach sometimes makes mistakes. You should review the output, assess its accuracy and usefulness, ask follow-up questions, and decide what to use. You should check other sources if the accuracy is in doubt. RPS Coach does not provide legal advice or act as a mediator. You may hire an attorney or mediator if you need their help. It would help me give you better responses if I understand your role in this chat. For example, are you chatting in one of the following roles? Mediator, attorney, party in dispute, educator or trainer, student or trainee, ADR program administrator. If not, please tell me why you are chatting with me. And I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about you? What brings you in today?
So, Coach, we are presenting live to a group of mediators specializing in family mediation. And I'd like you to give us some example of your skill set by telling us if you were counseling a mediator who is engaged in a high conflict divorce mediation and safety risks have become apparent. What would you advise? Oops, it's going to take that question, truncate it a little bit.
Got it. That's a great example to work with. And thanks for letting me know your role. Sounds like you're presenting as an educator or trainer to family mediators, right?
Close enough.
If I were counseling a mediator in a high conflict divorce case where safety risks have become apparent, I'd start by grounding us in the ethical obligation to ensure everyone can participate safely and effectively. Here's how I'd walk through it. First, I'd ask the mediator to pause and assess whether the process should continue at all. If there are signs of coercion, intimidation, or danger, physical or emotional, that can't be reasonably addressed, termination of the mediation might be necessary. That's not a failure, it's a protective decision. Next, I'd guide them to consider whether screening protocols had been used, and if not, whether a late stage screening is appropriate now. Screening isn't a one and done. Sometimes the risks emerge later. Then I'd talk with them about safety planning, which could involve using separate entry and exit routes, scheduling staggered times, or conducting mediation entirely by video, if that's safer and still appropriate. I'd also ask, are there supports the parties might need in the room or nearby, like an attorney, counselor, or advocate? I'd also raise whether private meetings, instead of joint sessions, might lower risk and increase each party's ability to make decisions without fear. And I'd make sure the mediator is alert to signs of decision fatigue, which can be amplified by trauma and conflict. And finally, I'd remind the mediator that it's okay to seek outside guidance. If they're unsure, they can consult with a supervisor, a co-mediator, or even legal counsel, depending on the program's structure? Would it help if I pulled examples from the domestic violence screening protocols or the mediation checklists to illustrate how mediators can integrate safety thinking into their systems? And do you want this framed more as a live demonstration or a handout to share?
Well, let me just test you on this a bit. If you had to terminate the session, how would you go about doing that?
That's a smart question, because how a mediator ends a session like this can affect the safety and dignity of the participants and the integrity of the process. So if I were advising a mediator facing that choice, I'd start by asking, does the termination need to be immediate, or is it safer to suspend and follow up later? If immediate, I'd suggest a neutral, non-blaming explanation. Something like, I'm pausing this session because I'm concerned that conditions right now may not support the kind of safe and productive conversation we aim for in mediation. You're not naming anyone or pointing fingers, and that language gives you space to protect all parties without escalating anything. If possible, the mediator should end the session privately with each person to avoid unsafe exits or direct confrontation. That might mean arranging separate departure times or exits. Then afterward, the mediator can debrief, maybe with a co-mediator, program coordinator, or clinical advisor, to document what happened, assess what safety planning might be needed, and consider whether mediation might resume in a different format or not at all. Would you like a short script or set of talking points for the mediator to use in those moments? Or maybe an outline for how to document the decision after the session ends?
I think we'll pause this for a minute and maybe see if there are questions from our audience.
I think everyone's kind of going wild about this. My first question is, and there's no questions I see in the chat so far, but can I download this on my chat GPT, or is there a cost for it, or is it included in the cost already?
Yeah, so if you go to the URL I had up just a moment ago, I'm sorry, I have, okay. If you go if you go read this article that's on the screen now,
Yeah.
which is available
Yeah.
for free, it has the link to his GPT in it.
Okay.
You need an
Okay.
account with ChatGPT, but I think a free account works. I have a paid one.
Okay.
But so if you just click on his link to his RPS coach from this article,
Okay.
you will it'll open ChatGPT and it'll open it to the RPS coach.
Okay. RPS negotiation. Okay. So I'll see if I can. It looks like we've got a couple of questions. I'm going to wildly try to find that link and send it to you. Do you want, I know that it's it's 2 o'clock. I don't, some people have to go, and I'm going to keep recording for as long as we go and as long as Gary is willing to stay with us. There's 2 questions. I think Sonia, you had your hand up first, then Karen. Is that okay, Gary?
Absolutely. And if you'd like,
right.
by the way, I can reactivate the bot and let you ask the question directly of the bot.
I wonder if it'll pick up, you know how sometimes it filters out the other voices? I don't know if it would work. That'd be really interesting to look.
I tried it out last night with my own cell phone, so I'm happy to let somebody give it a try.
It worked. Okay.
So,
Okay. Sonia, do you want to try?
Sure. No. Yeah. Sure. In French, test the translation simultaneous and everything. That would be interesting.
Thanks
I
very
just had
much.
a question before asking another before doing this.
Okay.
hold on just a second. Hold on just a second. If I don't go back, sorry, I reopened it, so it was going to go back through that whole script again. So let's not let it do that. Let me open this one. Are you ready to ask your question?
I will.
Okay, here we go.
What are the red flags of a power imbalance?
Yeah, it's not picking it up. What are the red flags of a power imbalance? Uh-oh, I may have lost it now because I opened the other window.
Oh, right. Yeah.
see if I can get it back.
So, I mean, while you're doing that, I mean, essentially it looks like what it's doing is pulling, like I can even feel it reading the article about how to do a safe termination while it's giving you that back. So they'll go through the library that it's been fed and pull out those pieces. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. I did not know about this, and I'm, desperate to go try it for myself. The Sonia, did you have another question? I don't know if
It was just about the link. If it would be possible to share the hyperlink that for the application.
I'm gonna log on to my chat GPT and see if I can
Okay.
pull up.
Sounds like
Uh,
you're
Thank you
reflecting
so
on
much. That
how
would be
clearly
great.
the materials address the actual moment of terminating a session.
Sorry,
when
I did
safety
get it
risks
back
emerge.
here.
You're right. It's often a bit subtle or implicit. Let's zoom in. The mediator checklist document talks about suspending or terminating mediation when a participant is unable to participate effectively, or if someone is acting fraudulently, illegally, or otherwise improperly. It also says to assess whether participants can engage effectively and to make reasonable accommodations. But if those aren't enough, termination is an ethical option.
Hey,
It
Coach,
doesn't always give a script
I need
or
to
a
stop you.
step-by-step termination
I
plan.
need to stop it for the net. Okay. So yeah, let me see if I can just grab this link. I don't know if this will work or not, and put it in the chat. Oh, wait. You might try that one, which is the actual link to to where we are right now.
okay, I'll try it. I'm trying to load it. Right now it's saying error on mine chat GPT.
Yeah, because you're probably trying to, that link is going to drop you into the middle of my chat, which you probably can't do.
Right. Yeah. So I think what we have to do is look up John Landy's University of Missouri article, the artificial intelligent art, the name of the article is probably what we need to get.
I may have backed out far enough here. Try this one. This will probably get you where you want to go.
Okay.
By backing up on where I was.
Are you putting it in the chat?
I did, yeah.
Okay. I don't see it. That's weird.
Oh, sorry, it only went to one. I accidentally clicked off of everyone. Let me do it again.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Went to the first alphabetic person on the list.
Oh, okay. That you got lucky, whoever that was.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on just a second.
Okay. This is fascinating. So this now, and why would someone like John Landy do this for people? Is it just out of the goodness of his heart he decided to do this? Is he trying to monetize this?
I hope he won't mind if I share this, but honestly, he has devoted his entire life to to trying to help make mediators better at what they do. And he's a little frustrated that he hasn't had as much impact as he'd hoped. So he continues to work with me first on the checklist and now on his own building this bot. And he's making it available for free. It is entirely in his mind, I think, trying to have the impact he hoped his academic career would have.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. If you click on that link, everyone, in that chat, it will take you right to ChatGPT and it puts that tool into your ChatGPT history. So I've got it open now. I'm going to just keep it there.
I should warn you, if you tell it actually to respond to you in an informal, friendly way, you can have it add humor or even sarcasm, and it will.
Yes.
And the chats that John has sent me they are seriously in danger of his falling in love with his device. And they're so human and so personal. It's astonishing.
Well, it's incredible. I've had clients who I ask it, are you in therapy? And more people are saying I talk to ChatGPT. that's their therapy. It's accessible, it's what they can afford, and it's there. I've even asked it questions, to help me with some navigate social situations, and it's quite insightful. Karen, you had a question. Sorry, I didn't.
So Gary, thank you so much. This has been really informative. And I know I've been dabbling in AI with a couple different tools, and I think it's just a huge world. And I'm looking forward to exploring a little bit more. And you gave me some good food for thought today. Just a couple quick questions. First of all, one of the things I wrote down that really resonated with me is about the ability for it to give us constructive language. And I think, I've used this for refining a lot of my personal messages, some of my professional messages. So it really is a fantastic tool on many levels. A quick question for you though, because I'm always thinking about, as mediators, we're dealing with some very personal and confidential information. And I'm curious about, right now, if I was writing a happy birthday message, I would draft it and then type it into, or then paste it into AI. I actually use ChatGPT. So I'm curious about where that information sits. Or how does confidentiality play into this and security of people's personal information? I mean, I'm thinking about a couple workarounds that would work, making sure personal information isn't brought over to a secondary app. And I think my second question is around, I heard you allude a little bit to about how this AI is integrated into ADR Notable. And I'm wondering if there's checks and balances that have been created to ensure that there's that privacy of information that I'm talking about.
Okay, taking first question first. Each of these tools, approaches the privacy component differently, and you have to go kind of read the fine print. The basic free ChatGPT, last time I checked, does not promise you that the inputs you provide, the prompts, will not be used to continue to train part of its training database. Now, is that really a risk of disclosure? No, I don't think so, because I don't know how you'd extract that little fragment out again. But is it arguably breaching the confidence in such a way that somebody might argue, well, if you put it in there, it's no longer confidential, and therefore I should be able to get it too. So it may break your confidentiality as more kind of a technical legal matter than it is a genuine risk. Some of them, like I mentioned, Anthropic's Claude specifically says they do not do that, and I believe them. The ChatGPT models, as you subscribe, you can control that so that it does not preserve that data in any way. And then some of the dedicated legal tools also do not do it. I am pretty confident that John's curated version also does not use your prompts to continue to train the database. Now, I should probably check that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. And then just to be clear, we have not yet incorporated any AI into ADR Notable. John and I are working on putting this tool in, but we're just getting started. So that's still months away. I said to him, look, I've been striving to just help mediators be better by relieving administrative tools. You are directly trying to help them be better mediators. It's just amazing. I'm very excited to work with him.
Well, thank you for that info. And I think, what really piqued my interest was just some of those encryption pieces that you have within ADR Notable. And I think that in the meantime with AI, I'm just really cognizant of not only whether we're breaching somebody's confidentiality around making a record of things or what have you, but also about hackers. And I'm really cognizant of that. So anyways, I think there's workarounds that we can still use if we're looking for wording or suggestions. So thank you very much. This is really a great presentation.
Very often people use the tool and they just don't use people's actual names and ensure that they don't provide sufficient detail that somebody could deduce who that was if somebody actually read the entire prompt.
That's what I was really thinking the workaround would be. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So good. Sonia has her hand up.
Yes.
Mary, is that okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, I can keep going. I don't have anything for questions.
You don't have a Okay, okay, good, thanks.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Gary. Excellent presentation. This is really fascinating. I was wondering if it would be possible to, does it have an equivalent French version, or would it be able to directly right there and then do the command that I would give it in French?
I am about 90% sure. I know there are settings in my system.
Right.
When I go into ChatGPT and I'm messing with settings, it just automatically adjusts to the
Oh.
language of the prompt.
Subtle. Mm-hmm.
So I
Okay, so
am
can I test it?
90% sure it's going to just automatically adjust the prompt for you. So I haven't tried it through John Landy's coach, but the basic Chat GPT just adjusts all of its input and output based on
That
what
I
your
know, yes.
initial prompt is.
So it would draft something, let's say I would ask it to provide a draft of, let's say, certain provisions in French, and it would do it.
I believe so. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
pretty
Okay.
confident that's true.
You don't want us to try to test it? No.
I'm sorry, I missed that
Would
one.
you mind if we test it, or?
Oh, no, not at all. Let's see if we can.
Let's see if we
try
can,
that.
because I'm really curious. I would really, this would be so useful for me.
I
Yeah.
want to just
And
add
for others.
something that this is Amakaya here. I just want to add something that I've tried. I speak to ChatGPT in other languages, and it just speaks back to me in that language. So, and also populates the wording. So when we try it, you'll see, but it's quite,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
quite
just really,
seamless.
right. I just want to see like how, like, what it's drafting exactly, and
Yeah, definitely.
okay, thank you. That's so.
Yeah, I think it's going to go, I closed out of the ChatGPT, so it's going to get the coach. So it's going to give me that long speech again if I start it up again. So I'm not sure we can test it right now without hearing the whole.
I mean, that's great, Amaka. Thanks for adding that in, that you've had positive experience. So Sonia,
Yeah.
I just encourage you to check that out on your own and see what the results were. That's fantastic.
And that is the
This is
expected.
really
That's
incredible.
what I expected to hear, is that it's just going to adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the RPS negotiation mediation coach is like, I can, I'm very excited to just go and play with this myself. I think, the first experience that I had with ChatGPT a couple of years ago was, when I had a client had an impasse, like they had to make a decision and it was very difficult for them. And we had a webinar on AI a few years ago. And I said, there's this thing we could use, and we could put in just write in some things to ChatGPT and we could ask it what it thinks, if you'd like. And they were both very techie people. And they both agreed, the clients, and I, for the first time, wrote in their dilemma, and I shared screen and I showed them it was not verbal, it was just written, and it spat out a bunch of solutions that they could potentially use. And then I said, oh, can you put that into a chart so that we could, I could send them this chart, and it did that too. And it was just, from that moment on, I was like, this is incredible. And, absolutely the workaround, I think, is never putting in people's names. You can just put, parent and parent, or parent one and parent two, whatever you want, so that there's nothing in there. And paying for the plus version, which is I see what you've got, Gary, I think adds that. I'm not sure if it adds all the security we're looking for, but it does give a tiny bit more peace of mind. So
right,
that's
exactly.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about this. I mean, I think it's an amazing step forward. I did the whole story because I do think you need to be cautious still a little bit.
Yes. Oh yeah.
But the way John has created this, it relies on you to your judgment ultimately in the end, right?
Yeah. It's giving you, I can hear it reading the articles. I mean, I find it incredible. Christine, you have a question, and I know we probably can't go much longer, but Christine, you have a question, so I want to make sure if
Thank
that's
you.
okay, Gary. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So let me begin by saying thank you. I think this has been a very strong presentation. I appreciate the history and the background, how you came to where we are today and your experiences. What I have a question about is potentially a philosophical one, but how it's being addressed from a technological perspective, specifically about the RAG, where you explained to us that you can create a knowledge base of your own. And then based on that knowledge base, it can then seek out external sources of data to augment or enrich that lens. And one of the things that we seek as mediators to ensure is to maintain our neutrality as well as to being creative. And what I wonder is, how does this approach manage or address potential risks around confirmation bias?
So I apologize, but I lost part of that because of my internet system. So I hate
Okay.
to ask the
So-
whole question again, but try.
What I'm asking for is when we use systems like RAG, where we have created a database that is our database of knowledge, and then building on that lens of information, look to external sources for additional augmentation of that database. How does technology address confirmation bias?
Yeah, it is a great question, and the honest answer is it's not going to. You're going to have to work. I mean, this is the classic garbage in, garbage out, right? If you create your own curated database that has a bias, innately within it, that is now going to become the filter for the output that you get. So it will not defeat it. It will, in fact, amplify your confirmation bias. So it is going to be very much up to the parties who create these mini GPTs or or notebook LMs, to think hard about the content that they include to allow that system to filter the results.
I think that's the exact answer that I was thinking too, Gary, and the garbage in, garbage out theory is 100% applicable here. And I think as mediators, what's good to remember is that you're not decision makers. So this is actually a tool that can be quite useful for us when, you're just trying to generate potentially creative solutions. Like Gary said, there might be one idea out of 20 that could be a little bit interesting and something that you might not have thought of. And so it's really using this as a research tool. I find you pull out, you let it talk, and our job is to sort of pick out and filter. But ultimately, the clients decide. So we're not at risk, as much. I think there's always risk, but we're not as risk at much because we're not decision makers. I think a decision maker has a higher degree of risk here using ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think the way John structured this whole thing, where it goes and gets these kind of checklists, where many of the checklists just prompt you to think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be hard, that I think will mitigate bias to a substantial degree. Now, it may be biased in the sense of the questions that it tells you should run through your own brain, but it's not trying to answer questions very much for you, so much as it helps framework for preparation, thoughts or ideas or concepts about how to get out of certain kinds of situations and so forth. So, it is the way he designed his particular model, because the content is question asking, not definitive answers. I think he's really done a service to people about, worrying about that kind of confirmation bias.
So just as a follow-up then, do you, given your deep familiarity in the development of AI as well as its innovations in all aspects of our lives today, we talked about how people use it as a companion source, and really how it's addressing many different industries. One of the industries was a consideration of the judicial system and sentencing structures. Do you foreshadow a time in which AI would provide that type of a platform, or is it something that you see as a companion to the human directive?
Yeah, in my lifetime, and I'm 68 years old, I see it only in the latter role. But if you go far enough down into the future, once I mean, it's gonna be a social reason where we get over that hump, right? Where we trust a fully automated system sufficiently to turn over decision making to a bot or a robot or whatever. That's gonna happen far later than maybe than it should, right? I mean, it probably will be reliable long before we trust it enough to actually take the human out of the loop. But the products that I work with now and that I advise people that John's talking about, they're all targeting helping you be better, not trying to replace you. I mean, it's all about, like I said, in the early days of my product is trying to get the burden off of you of this administrative work. His now takes another giant step of just helping stimulate your brain to make sure you don't overlook anything in a particular situation. You asked yourself all the right hard questions. I think that's brilliant. I mean, I think that's a great next step. It's going to be a long time though before I think that. Well, actually, I'm trying to invite this guy who's building a fully automated mediator. There are now two companies, unfortunately, called Fourth Party, and I'm trying to invite him to speak to the ABA dispute resolution technology section, which I chair.
Oh,
Been going back and forth with him. I haven't nailed him down yet. And I think he's still in development. So I don't know if I don't know if it's a product yet or if it's a dream. So I'm still trying to reach him.
that's really cool. That is so amazing. Gary, thank you so much for being generous with your time. I know it's well past the time that we said we would go, and the fact that you have lots of people here still able to listen in is wonderful. So thank you to the OIFM members for being here. We've got this recorded. I will post it. Gary has given me permission to do that. I think this has been incredibly insightful. I'm presenting on the use of AI at our Family Peacemakers Conference with Amanda Reese, and I'm going to definitely be going in and adding a few slides about this, the RPS coach. I think that I'll have a look and share that tool because that's absolutely, I think, game changing in terms of making us think. And really, that is what we're asking our mediators to do, is to think, to analyze, to be curious and be creative. And these prompting questions are an absolute gateway to that. So thank you so, so much. It's been incredible. I know we'll have more opportunities to do webinars, and you have multiple topics. So I know we'll see you again, Gary. So we'll look forward to that. We'll plan that soon.
Perfect. Love the
Thank you.
opportunity. Always happy to talk to my
Oh,
friends
yeah.
north of the border.
North of the, but yeah, we are still your friends.
Yeah,
So
and I yours, just to be clear.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And then ADR Notable, just really, Gary has this product, ADR Notable, which is absolutely incredible. It is at $29.95 US a month. There is an OAFM member discount that they've been very generous in giving. I know profit margins are low, so there's a 10% discount for OAFM members, and they've been a great company to work with. And have a look. I think it's a great product. So there you go. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll stop recording. Thank you so much.